Welcome back to the Finger Wag Podcast. I'm your host, Gideon Hertz. I'm joined again by Jake Foote. What's up, Jake?
Not much, Gideon. Good to be back, as always.
We are getting dangerously close to Hoya basketball now, and we are turning our attention to the heart of the matter, Big East basketball. And we're going to do, over the next couple weeks here, Big East preview in two parts. Today, we'll talk about each of the teams in the Big East, give you an assessment, get you ready for college basketball, assuming you have not necessarily been paying the closest attention to these teams over the past couple months. We will help you out with that. And then next week, we will dive into some predictions for how the conference will finish, awards, all Big East teams, all of that good stuff. And then hopefully we will have some real Hoya basketball to talk about with exhibition games coming up against GW and Kentucky very soon on the horizon. Before we dive into that, just some news and notes. We learned this week that Hoya target Jayden Hodge, 2026 top 100 small forward playing down in Florida at Montverde, committed to Northwestern. General consensus, I think, and sort of my thinking is Jayden Hodge was maybe a secondary candidate or target for Georgetown, somebody who they would probably, could pivot to if the Caden Samuels, Alex Constanzas, those kind of top tier small forwards didn't work out. But how do you read this commitment from Jayden Hodge, Jake? Do you read anything into it at all?
Not necessarily. I think that, one, we probably weren't recruiting him the hardest, even though he did take an official visit with us. And two, I think Jayden, that is, was pretty aware, judging by the schools that were recruiting him and the list that he put out, that given his game, in which he's kind of this real tough physical kid, but not the most refined, not the best shooter, he's probably better off playing at a level where, he can kind of get on the floor immediately, whether that's mid-major or a Northwestern. And I say that kind of as a slight to Northwestern, just because financially and resource-wise, they're probably not up to snuff, although they are a good program and have had a lot of success the last few years. But yeah, I wouldn't lose any sleep over losing Hodge. I don't think we totally prioritized him. I do think he's kind of a coolly fit, but probably was going to be a guy that when he came in was going to be a 9th, 10th, 11th man, and is a guy that if he kills it at Northwestern may, by the time he's an adult and a little more refined offensively, could be portaling even up a level from that. So we wish Jayden the best, but nothing further than that. Now all eyes turn to beating his older brother at Villanova.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think, if you really, really, really want to squint and read into it, that Georgetown feels good about where they are with Caden Samuels and others, it's your prerogative. I don't know that this says anything like that, other than Georgetown is kind of in the exact same place as it was previously, which was Jayden Hodge was a kid they were interested in. I think it makes sense that at Northwestern, nothing much to read there.
Yeah, and it looks like we have Caldwell in hand. I think with the rest of the recruiting class they're really big fish hunting. And again, I don't want to compare us to Northwestern, because in reality, Northwestern's probably been better than us. But I think probably moving forward, we're going to be a little more persuasive in the recruiting field, just because of resources and
for sure
moving forward. So no slight to Northwestern, no slight to Jayden Hodge. I bet he has a pretty strong, successful college career. But I think we've kind of narrowed our focus onto the 4 5 stars or fringe 5 stars, and hopefully you can nab one, potentially two.
We're not going to go through the whole Big East schedule, but just a couple of highlights before we dive into the teams. A few things that jump out to me as I was looking through this schedule. Obviously, they've got the opener on the 17th at Marquette, so opening up the Big East schedule on the road. And then they have their final non-conference game against Coppin State, I think, after their second Big East game. So a little bit of a weird non-conference peak coming back in to the schedule. That Coppin State game will also be at McDonough. The St. John's game has gotten a lot of, I think, of the attention. It's the big one that will be on New Year's Eve at Capital One. Obviously, I'm assuming there are no students for that, but hopefully that could be a fun atmosphere on New Year's Eve, presuming Georgetown is still in the picture at that point. You've got a big one at UConn, welcoming UConn to DC on the 17th of January. That's their lone game on Fox this year. That's a noon tip, the Fox big game of the Saturday or whatever they call it. And then always fun, the two Providence games. The first one not coming until January 24th at Providence, and then they close the Big East season with Providence at home on March 7th. I don't love their schedule. I don't love how things really worked out for the Big East schedule. There's not a lot of wiggle room there. The ending last game with Providence could be great, or it could be a bust. I don't like the New Year's Eve game as much, but what are your takeaways, if anything, from the schedule, Jake?
I never get too worked up about it because at the end of
Fair.
the day, you're playing every team twice, once home, once away. These coaches are all extremely familiar with each other. Now there's a little more variability because the rosters turn over so much that you're not playing the same guys year to year, but these coaches know what to expect. There's no real surprises in this league. I always feel like we kind of get a little shafted with what home games end up with students off campus.
Yeah.
You know, ideally St. John's and Providence are like the two ones we have students for, and students probably won't be at either, given that Providence lies in spring break, which
Yep.
also I think Georgetown takes the earliest spring break of anybody ever. Everybody's usually is during the Big East tournament weekend, and we do it during the last weekend of the season, which always loses one impactful home game. I bet you the staff's not the most thrilled that there's a lot of home away, and you don't
Yeah.
really get any of these extended stays at home where you get to practice at home, sleep in your own dorm. And then there's that stretch in the middle. Now I look less and less at how we line up against the best teams and more against where you line up against the middle and the bottom, because those are the teams you just absolutely have to beat. And there's a stretch from January 21st to February 4th where you play Villanova, Providence, DePaul, and Butler, 3 of which are on the road. DePaul's the only home one. That kind of has to be a stretch where if you are a good team, you are a tournament team, you get 3 of the 4, even playing on the road. And I think that might be the stretch where your season could be broken or could be made.
Yeah.
Probably made less so because beating those teams isn't going to move the needle a ton, but that's going to be a really tough stretch that you have to do well, because it's bookended on one end by Creighton and UConn, and on the other end by Creighton, Villanova, UConn. So need some wins in that stretch.
Yeah, the stretch there that you just got to survive, and it comes in the dark days of winter that always hit or miss. Well, let's dive into those groupings. And what I've done here, I'm going to present to you my tiers for the Big East of where these teams land, and ask for where you disagree, if anywhere here. And then we'll dive in and go through each one of these teams, what people should look at, who the most important players are, their biggest question marks, takeaways, and all of that. But my first tier are the legit contenders. And this is capital C contenders. These are teams that I think realistically could contend for a national championship. And for me, those two teams shouldn't be a surprise. Maybe the order that I would have them in could be a surprise, but I think St. John's is the class of the Big East this year by a not insignificant amount. I think there's bigger questions about UConn, but they are still up there. Those are the two that are the biggest contenders. And then you've got your two solid tourney teams. And these guys have been in and around the mix and have made the tourney consistently over the past couple of years. Creighton and Marquette, I think they're fairly even. We bump down to a tier 3 that is, I would say, bubblicious, in that they are on the bubble, trying to play themselves into the tournament in that 65 to 70, 60 to 70 rank. And I think that's where Georgetown finds itself. I think Providence is in that group. I think Villanova is in that group. Maybe more on pedigree and coaching than anything. I'm not sure that their roster justifies it, but they get the bump. I've got the tier 4, which is just like a big question mark for me. Could be something, could be nothing. I have no idea what to expect from these two teams, but it's Butler and Xavier. And then you've got, for me, the yikes tier, the watch out. Seton Hall, and DePaul.
Totally,
Thoughts?
totally happy running through them in those tiers. I agree with your thoughts at the top. St. John's and UConn, national championship contenders. I'd probably be comfortable betting that one of them makes the Final Four this year, just with what they have on the sidelines coaching them. I agree that I'd have St. John's a tick above UConn. Just a little worried about UConn on the defensive side of the ball, which we can get into a little further. I would like to lump Marquette and Creighton in with the Providence, Georgetown, and Villanova right behind them, but I do agree that they probably deserve the benefit of the doubt with the coaches and with the tournament history, that they should be seen as 3-4 until somebody proves otherwise. In the bottom four there, I like DePaul a lot more than you, I think.
We'll get into it for sure.
We'll get into it more, but I think they got a better chance of finishing. Let me say this. I think they've got a better chance of finishing 7 than 11. And I think they're on the 7, 8, 9 line.
Got it.
And I really don't like Xavier.
Yeah, I'm with you. The more that I look at Xavier, I'm with you there. But let's dive into these teams one at a time and go through them so we can talk it through. Let's start with the class that I think we agree on. St. John's is Pitino year 3. Their roster is stacked. They finished last year 31-5, 18-2 in the conference. Ken Pom, I think, was 10th. No,
they were 14th.
They finished 14th, 68 on offense, which is really the big highlight for me. 2 on defense. They were a 2 seed in the tournament, lost to Arkansas in the second round in a weird game that they just looked like they kind of fell off. RJ Lewis doesn't play in the last couple of, the last half of that game, really. What do you like about St. John's? Why are they so dangerous, and what do you think their upside is?
Again, upside I think is national championship. The team is expensive. It's not very young. It's low. It's deep, and it's got Pitino, who is still probably the best 2, 3, 4 coach in the sport. He's got his fastball. Yeah. They probably start Ian Jackson from UNC with Jason Sanon from Arizona State, with Bryce Hopkins from Cooley Lore at Providence, and Zuby. Who knows who the fifth is going to be? Isaiah Sellers, Dylan Mitchell, Dylan Darling playing as a point guard. Could be any of them. But pretty much everybody they brought in is a top 100 to a top 150 portal guy. And Zuby is the best player in the conference, if not the best player in the country. Now, if you run through what to expect, like we said, finished KenPom 14 last year, number 2 rated defense. And I think the important thing here is that this is nothing new for Pitino. Top 8 defense nationally in 8 of his last years at Louisville. When he's operating at the top of the sport, his teams are the best of the best defensively.
Yeah.
Now, he sacrificed his personnel defensively a little bit this year compared to what he had last year and what he's had in the past to fix the shooting. The shooting last year was their big limiter. They shot 30% from 3. They were 340th in the country. And if their offensive rebound rate wasn't so good, they wouldn't have even touched top 75. Now that's fixed, I think. They don't totally have a point guard unless Darling wins that job or Ian Jackson becomes a clear-cut lead guard and professional basketball player. But Jackson, Sanon, Isaiah Sellers, Dylan Darling were all 35+% three-point shooters, all on good volume. If you could convince yourself that Bryce Hopkins is going to shoot it well, he did 2 years ago or 3 years ago now under Cooley when he was all Big East player. And even Zuby stepped out a little bit last year and shot it. I'm assuming he's going to try to take that step to make sure that he's an NBA player. So I really don't see a weakness because they're going to score, they're going to defend, and they have the best player in the conference.
If I'm squinting for a weakness, maybe they aren't super deep. You mentioned kind of their 7 guys.
I think they are, though.
Well, there you go.
I mean, maybe not, but Prey was not great. Io not great. But they're guys that played a little bit on a top 15 team last year, and now they're guys that are kind of like break glass in case of emergency. They bring in Odie, top 75 freshman, who I think Pitino likes because he said he was never going to touch freshmen again. And if things go right for St. John's, like Lefty never sees the floor. And Lefty was a guy that, to prove a point to Luis last year, Pitino played 10, 15 minutes in the second half of a game against a Calipari team, which in hindsight was a grave mistake. But
Yeah.
I think you really don't need more than 7, more than 8. And I think with whoever wins out that battle of Prey and AO is going to be totally fine as an 8th man in this league.
Yeah, I think to me there's a clear top 7, which is frankly all you need. I don't know that you need a lot more than that. I'm squinting here. I haven't looked at everything, but as I'm looking at this roster, it looks like if it is not the most expensive in the country, it is up there with the transfers that they brought in. They are, and I don't say that to denigrate them at all. You're giving one of the best college coaches of all time one of the best rosters money can buy. I would bet on them being really, really good. And the question is, even with the defensive, drop off that we might expect coming from last year, they're still probably going to be a top 10, top 15 defense. Can they be a top 15, top 20 offense and be one of the best all around teams in the country playing for a national championship? Totally.
I would agree.
So you mentioned Zuby is obviously their best player in the conference, best player in the country potentially. You're expecting big things from him. Who besides him is most important for you? Is it Jackson or Darling, whoever figures out how to play that one? Or is there somebody else who you're looking at that holds the keys for this team?
Yeah, so Zuby really holds the keys just in how dominant he's going to be. But I will touch upon a couple guys I think here that I think could have equal impacts. The thing about them is they're going to be so good and have so many guys that it's not just one mouth that needs to be fed or just one guy that's going to beat you. There's going to be so many good players here. But Zuby, when you look at his numbers, he was crazy good last year. He had an 87.3 defensive rating with him on the floor, which is absurdly good. Only a couple teams in the country are touching that. They were plus 31.4 net rating with him on the floor. That's a top 5 to 10 team in the country, no matter how you slice it. Decent enough rim protector. Opponents shot less than 55% at the rim. Funny enough, they shot 50%, 4% less with him off the court. Shout out Vince. But he's so switchable. He's so big. He's such a monster on the boards. They had a 40% offensive rebound rate when he was on the floor last year. 10%, pretty much 10% better than when he was off. And at the end of the year, it looked like it clicked to him that he could score whenever he wanted and that no big really anywhere in the country had the physical makeup to provide any resistance towards him. Their last 3 games against real teams were Arkansas, Creighton, and Marquette, and he had a combined 76 points and 25 rebounds. Sport was getting really easy for him. But if you do step away from Zuby as to what's most important for them, I think it's probably Ian Jackson, just because I think he's got to be the guy that is somewhat of a lead guard initiating distributor while also packing the scoring punch. I think he can be that guy, but also at the same time, I think they're fine if he isn't, because they can totally get away with playing Darling a lot of minutes. He was the Big Sky Player of the Year, big time passer, big time shooter, pretty good athlete for a kid of his frame. And then Hopkins can probably also be an initiator on offense. But the guy that I haven't even mentioned at all that I really, really love, and I think fits Pitino to a T, is Dylan Mitchell, who I think they're going to bring off the bench to start as like a backup for Hopkins, small ball backup for Zuby, potentially plays some 3 alongside Hopkins and Zuby in some jumbo lineups. And Mitchell years ago was a 5-star guy and all over NBA radars, and it turned out he couldn't really dribble a basketball or make a shot. So that didn't totally come to fruition for him. But I think there's a real argument that he's the best defensive player in the country. Just super long, super athletic. At Cincinnati, they only allowed 0.95 points per possession and had a 91 adjusted defensive rating with him on the floor. And that jumped a whole 15 points per 100 with him off, which is just a crazy impact for a guy that at Cincinnati was playing as a wing. He made a 7% difference at field goal percentage at the rim so he can be a secondary shot blocker as a 3 or 4 or even as a small ball 5. And in reality, he does guard 1 through 5, and he does what Pitino wants to do, which is apply pressure, be able to switch. I think when Pitino gets his hands on that kid, it's going to be hard for him to keep him off the floor, especially if and when there's scoring elsewhere.
Yeah, they're going to be really good.
It's just a perfect jigsaw puzzle for Pitino that whatever he desires on a certain night, he can put it together. Whether it's perimeter shooting, whether it's just a real big physical mean team, he's got everything at his disposal.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about UConn, because looking at St. John's roster is making me kind of nauseous a little bit. So let's go to another contender. Little interesting question here for Hurley after being the dominant force in the sport for a couple of years. Had a little bit of a letdown fallback season last year. Can they bounce back? They finished last year 25-11, 14-6 in the league. They were top 20 in 32 in
32 in
KenPom.
KenPom with 5th ranked defense, which for Hurley standards was ugly.
Yeah, their defense was a huge issue last year. Their offense was great, as it always is, 15. They ended up an 8 seed, losing to Florida by 2, one of the better games I think Florida got in the tournament. Talk to me about this UConn roster. What do you see?
A lot of continuity, which is good. They're going to be a top 5 to 10 offense probably in the sport. And the team at the end of the year playing against Florida looked a hell of a lot better than KenPom 32 and the 75th ranked defense, which is just a testament to Hurley and that staff. I think even if there are personnel limitations, Hurley will have spent the last 8 months finding a defensive schematic solution. So I'm really not too worried about them on that end. And I think they've supplemented the roster enough that they're back in the Final Four conversation. I really like that they went out and got Silas Demery. Diarra got a lot of flack last year for being not good enough for UConn standards, and I think that may have been true. Probably not on the defensive side of the ball. I think he was actually pretty good at applying some pressure at the point of attack. I'll go into it more later, but I think Ball was more at fault there. But Demery is a guy that's going to give you probably more than Diarra defensively, and he's going to give you a hell of a lot more offensively.
Yeah.
He was 14-4-3 in a stacked SEC. A little inefficient. UConn's not going to ask him to be such a high usage guy. It's basically like a jumbo. I shouldn't say jumbo because Tristan Newton was 6'6", but it's like a bully version of Tristan Newton, like a little more muscle mass, a little more athleticism to it. And, that's Hurley's dream lead guard at the point of attack.
Yeah.
Now around him, they bring back 3 really awesome players in Solo Ball, Alex Caravan, and Terrace Reed. Solo Ball can shoot the lights out, 42% from 3 last year. I get less excited about him because I think he is a little bit of a turnstile. They were 10 points better per 100 defensively. Yes, they were 10 points better per 100 defensively with him off the floor last year. But with the way Hurley and Murray run that offense, they're just going to have him catching off the move all year in conjunction with Mullins and Caravan. Caravan, everybody that's ever watched college basketball has seen him play 50 games at this point. And Mullins has a really great reputation for a freshman. Supposed to be a total gamer, big time shot maker. Probably gives you something similar in the mold of McNeely, who actually was a really good defender last year. Probably needed him to make a little more shots, but first round pick, good player. My favorite thing about this team, unequivocally, is Terrace Reed, that is their center. Yeah. I think he's going to be a monster, all Big East, second best center in the league behind Zuby, probably without a close third. He was actually decent defensively last year. A lot of the defense got blamed on Donovan Klingen's gone. This is going to be a different defense. But they were actually pretty good at the rim. Sampson allowed 49.1% field goal percentage at the rim. Terrace 51.4%. And both of those are really good ranks. I just think that they didn't stop the ball or make rotations like an old UConn team did. But the fact that Terrace was a 51% at the rim guy, he had a 96.3 adjusted D rating, which was 6-7 points better than Sampson's. He fouled a little more than 5 times per 40, which I think is a good omen for him moving up to a 28 to 30 minute a game guy. And if he's able to provide some resistance on that end and play those 30 minutes, what he does offensively and on the offensive glass, or not only the offensive glass, but the defensive glass as well, total stat stuffer. He was 19 points and 15 rebounds per 40 last year. And I think with a long leash this year, it's going to look like a Sonogo when Hurley had him. So optimism lies with the offense. They're going to be extremely, extremely well coached, as they always are. If they find the solutions on the defensive end, put together it doesn't even have to be great, top 40 defense in the country, they're going to win 17 games in conference probably. Just Hurley's so good.
Yeah. One question for me is what happens if Terrace gets into any foul trouble or they need to spell him? Do they have depth at the center position? I know they've got this freshman that they're bringing in from Germany. Supposed to be good. I don't know anything about him. So count me as skeptical.
So Reeby's the freshman, and he's German, but he's spent time in the United States. He actually played high school at Bullis, down the street in Maryland. Kind of a fast riser in the later stages of his recruitment. It looked like it was going to be Creighton or UConn, where it was, who do you want to be, Kalkbrenner or Klingen?
Yeah.
And I think he's a little on the frail side for the Big East as a freshman, but in time is going to be an amazing player. Hurley's done this before where he had freshman Klingen behind physical monster Sonogo. And if it clicks for Reeby, it's 40 minutes of a great center rotation. And that's really been Hurley's superpower in the past, that some of these teams can only trot out their stud center for 24 to 28 minutes a game. And those national championship teams were just relentless. It was just 40 minutes of good front court play, and you never got a break. So we'll see. If Reeby gives them a good 12 minutes a game, they're going to be awesome.
Yeah, and I fully expect that Caravan is going to run out of eligibility like mid-season. I think that's got to happen. Just the law of averages would state that eventually he has to run out of eligibility. He is what he is. He's been very solid. I think there was some questions about how he showed up at big spots last year that, for me, remain in the picture, whether he really is the guy or not. But as you mentioned, he doesn't have to be the guy on this team, and they also are going to be very, very good.
Yeah, he proved he can't be the guy, but I do think if things go right with their player development and their recruiting, there's a chance that he's the fifth best guy out there again, like he was on the national championship teams. And if that's the case, you're not going to get better connective tissue in the entire country than Alec Caravan.
Let's jump down to our next tier, the solid tourney teams. As you said, I think we have to respectfully call them 3-4 until somebody comes and takes it from them, starting with Creighton, who exist as a high floor team under Doug McDermott. They had another high floor, low ceiling year last year where they made a tournament as a 9 seed, exited in the second round to Auburn, finished the year 24-11, 15-5 in the Big East, 35 in KenPom with a 33rd on offense and 44th on defense, bringing in quite a few, a couple of Iowa guys, returning a couple of guys. What do you like, and what do you see with this squad?
So I think the elephant in the room, $1 million question is, what the hell does Creighton look like without Ryan Kalkbrenner? He fixed everything about McDermott defensively, and McDermott was a great coach before him, but his 5 years with Kalkbrenner defensively, their defenses were ranked in KenPom 32, 19, 14, 24, and 44. That's 5 straight top 45 defenses. In his 10 years at Creighton without Kalkbrenner, his best was 46. In his 20 years coaching Division I without Kalkbrenner, he's got 1 top 45 defense. And that was done at Northern Iowa 2 decades ago. Now, they're bringing in Owen Freeman as their center. That's their Kalkbrenner replacement, who was a really good player in the Big Ten. Probably Iowa's best player. He's a per 40 monster, really good offensive player, has some shot blocking ability, although that didn't rear its head as any sort of resistance on Iowa's defense. But who knows if that's Freeman or if that's just the way Franz was coaching those Iowa teams down the stretch. Now, Freeman's per 40 numbers, like I said, are crazy. 25 points, 14 rebounds, 4 blocks per 40 minutes. But he's got to be on the floor. Mm-hmm. He dealt with injuries last year. He's been dealing with injuries this summer, I should say, where he had a meniscus scare where they scraped it and said he's going to be fine for the beginning of the year. But I think all the variability lies in what he gives them. And there's a decent chance he's an all Big East team and they don't take a huge, or all Big East player, and they don't take a huge step back. Now, everywhere else, I hate the defense. I don't even love it. I don't even dislike it a little bit. I hate it. They bring in Nick Graves from Charlotte, big time scorer at Charlotte, 18 points per game. He shot 8 free throws per 40, doesn't play a lick of defense. Charlotte had 113 defensive rating. They bring in Dix from Iowa, big time shooter, really good connective tissue. But again, Iowa didn't play a lick of defense, 107 defensive rating with Dix on the floor. They bring in Blake Harper from Howard, a DMV kid. He was Conference Player of the Year, Conference Rookie of the Year as a freshman there. And Harper is an outstanding offensive prospect. Big lefty, can shoot it, can dribble it, can pass it. Was a guard his whole life and then had a big growth spurt his senior year playing at Gonzaga. But I don't think he has the physical capabilities to really be even an average defender. He's kind of got cement feet. And at least in the MEAC, he had no interest in playing defense. When he was on the floor, Howard had 120 defensive rating. They were 108 with him off. They also bring in Austin Schwartz from Miami, former top 60 kid, kind of a lottery ticket. Scored in bunches in small minutes at Miami, but again, no interest in playing defense, 123 defensive rating with him on the floor. They retain Jackson McAndrew. They retain Fedor Zugic. They retain Jason Green. They retain Isaac Trout. I think of those four, McAndrew's going to get the headlines as a guy who might become a legitimate scorer, legitimate shooter in the league. My favorite of the four is Green, because I think he kind of has the athletic capabilities to play all across the front court, and they may need him to play some small ball five. But I look at the collection of the parts and I think, damn, this is going to be a really good offensive team. Damn, they might not stop anybody. And I just think it's going to look like a McDermott team before Kalkbrenner, which went 6 years without winning an NCAA tournament game. And if it's worse than that, it's just going to look like a Fran Iowa team, which ends up on the wrong side of the bubble.
Yeah. My biggest and really only takeaway from this team is bet overs with Creighton. They are going to score a lot and they are going to give up a lot. Take the over.
Yeah, I really don't see a pathway for them playing great defense unless he just taps into something for Freeman. I will also note one thing regarding the center rotation here. They were did bring in a Serbian kid, Dimitrovic, who had a pretty good reputation, albeit pretty bad numbers over in the Adriatic League. And I think when they saw him, it wasn't good. And the rumor is they're going to redshirt him. But they recently brought in a Turkish kid from Besiktas, which is one of the best 3 or 4 teams in Turkey. They're pretty loaded over there. They had NBA draft picks, Ante Zizic, Ismail Kamagate. They have Devin Dotson from Kansas, Jonah Matthews, USC, Anthony Brown, Stanford. And he played decent minutes for them, like 12 minutes a game, and was pretty good. So I think he might be a pretty solid rotational player and or at least backup/emergency big for Freeman. So again, I don't fault McCaffrey at all for, not McCaffrey, McDermott. Oh my God, they're basically the same person. I don't fault McDermott for the roster construction because it's his team to a T. I just question, does he have this defensive cheat code that Kalkbrenner was?
Let's flip it now to Marquette, where this remains one of the most unique teams in 2025 college basketball. Once again, for the second straight year, bringing in no transfers. Continuity is king there. They finished last year 23-11, 13-7 in the Big East, 29th in KenPom, off of a 35 offense and 26 defense. In the tournament, there are 7 seeds that ends up getting beat by Richard Pitino's UNM squad. An interesting team here, a lot of familiar faces for them. They seem to sort of run out of gas last year. They just, their last month of the season, they just looked like they didn't have it. What do you see with Marquette?
I am such a Shaka guy, and I really don't like that he turned his nose up to the portal one more time. And I guess this is their thing. Continuity and develop is his superpower. It's his thing. And he's had guys in the past make these kind of astronomical steps from year to year and end up playing in the NBA. Now he's got kind of 3-4 main candidates that need to do so, whether that's Zayd Lowry, Royce Parham, Demarius Owens, Chase Ross, going from a really good role player to a all Big East superstar. You know, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I think that probably those jumps are made and they're going to be a good team. However, I don't know. I don't think they're a tournament team. I think a lot rides on point guard play here. They've had Kolek and Cam Jones last 2 years, who I vividly remember a podcast last year with Eyes on College Basketball, where they said something that one of the biggest cheat codes you can have in college basketball is if a point guard is on your team that could have been on an NBA roster, you're miles ahead of everybody. And I think the last 2 years they had that with Kolek, and they had that with Cam, where those guys didn't even, or Cam especially, probably didn't need it another year of college basketball. And they don't have anyone like that this year. Now, the point guards are going to be Sean Jones, who comes back from a knee injury, and Nigel James, who's everybody loves him as a freshman, and he's Shaka to a T. I think he's going to have a great career there. But I'm not totally convinced on Jones. Really elite defensive player, just not the best offensively. They were 13 points worse with him on than off 2 years ago when he played as Kolek's backup. And, take those on-off numbers with a grain of salt because Kolek and Jones were so good. But I think last year revealed how bad a Shaka offense can look without a Kolek / Cam Jones. And in the 400 possessions they had without Jones out there, they had a -7 rating, which was 35 points per 100 worse than when Jones was on the floor. And let's face it, there's no Cam Jones walking through the door. So I think there's just naturally a huge step back because it's not like this team was dominant last year. They were a fringe top 30 team. So a step back from that is a 50, top 60 KenPom team, which is just not great. So I don't know. I really don't know what to expect. The most impactful guy is obviously going to be Chase Ross. He was really good last year, 10 plus points per game in conference play, 34% from three in conference play. The question is, can that become a guy that's 17, 18 points per game? And can he be a creator of any sort? He was 12% assist to 14% turnover. So I'm less inclined that he's going to do the creation for others thing that Kolek and Cam did, but I think he's a super athlete, super ball player, and he's going to play in the NBA, and they're going to let him go. Like he's the guy that's coming off the leash this year.
Big question for me is, what is Ben Gold, and is Ben Gold good? Is my question.
I think no. I mean, so I think 1 through 4 they're going to be all right, albeit the point guard's probably not going to create enough to do the offensive things that they've done in the past. But I think Gold has been totally hidden in past years by how good the 1 through 4 around him was.
Yeah.
If you look at the numbers, when he was on the floor last year, they allowed 60% field goal at the rim, which is in fielder cook territory. It's remarkable that they had such a good defense, but the reason they did is because they turned people over so much and they got stops on the perimeter because Jones, Mitchell, Ross, all these guys were so good at the point of attack. They also allowed a 32% offensive rebound rate with him out there, which is not good. And this team's going to need to hold people to one because this is their identity is going to be defense. And he got chewed up at the end of the year by some of the bigger centers in the league, especially Zuby in the Big East tournament. It wasn't even a fair fight. And they don't really have a big man alternative to him. So they're riding with him, even though I think it was super apparent at the end of the year that they needed to upgrade that position to be nationally relevant, and they did not. But the personnel is going to lend itself to Havoc Shaka. You're going to get VCU Shaka. They're going to press a lot, and it's going to be fun. It's just I have no idea what to expect.
Yeah, I think it's particularly noteworthy that at the top of this conference, the two best players on those two best teams are Zuby Ejiofor and probably Terrace Reed, who are going to absolutely have their way with Ben Gold unless he pulls something magical out of his hat. And I'm with you. I don't see it happening for Marquette.
In Gold's defense, the other 9 teams, or I'll say 8, I'll give Freeman the benefit of the doubt at Creighton. The other 8 teams don't have a ton at the 5.
Yeah.
So most nights he probably survives. But you are right in that if they want to be what Marquette's been, a tournament team with a chance to win in March, he's got to be better.
All right, let's take it down to the level that I think Georgetown sits firmly in, this bubble level. Let's talk about Providence first. Big question, I think, on Providence fans' minds is Kim English, the coach at the end of the year, does he get another year? They had just a year from hell last year. Not good. 12-20, 6-14 in the Big East, 96th in KenPom with an 87 offense and a 134 defense. They lose to Butler in the Big East tournament. I'm intrigued by this because I think you like their roster, which I'm with you on that, but I have a big asterisk on it that we'll talk about. But tell me what you see with Providence.
I've wanted to be a hater of Providence, obviously ever since Cooley made the move. I wanted to be a hater this offseason, and in reality, I thought that 12-20 season and some volatility within the fan base was going to be a death sentence. And credit to Providence because they, whether it was Kim or donors or whatever it was, they got their ducks in a row and they put together, in my opinion, a top 4 roster on paper. And the portal guys are good, and we'll get to them. But I think it starts with retaining Oswin. Like that, they weren't going to get a center that's probably going to play at that impact this year. And I think he was, he wasn't Sorber, which our fan bases will fight about, but he was getting really good by the end of the year. In Big East play, Providence had a plus 14 rating with him on, pretty solid, and a negative 5 rating with him off, which is, not even remotely a high major team. They were 13 points better defensively, or 13 points per 100 possessions better defensively. He averaged 13, 10 and almost 4 blocks per 40 minutes in Big East play. He fouled a lot, but the fouling was improving as the year went on. His last 8 games, he averaged 10 points, 6 rebounds, almost 2 blocks, shot almost 80% from the field. He blossomed into a real player, and they just need to find a way to make him a 28-minute-a-game guy and not a 20-minute-a-game guy. And they'll have like a real anchor, which they need, because I think if there is a real question mark, it's going to be how does 1 through 4 stop ball on the perimeter.
So I'm with you on paper. I think this is a really good roster on paper. We can talk about their big transfer that they brought in, Jason Edwards. My counterpoint is not, are they good on paper? Is Kim English good? And I would say no. He's only been a high major coach for 4 years in college. So there is room for growth for Kim English. But in all 4 of his seasons, his team finishes lower at the end of the year in KenPom than they did in their preseason rank. So they underperformed in all 4 seasons, and he failed to put together a top 100 defense, except for the team he inherited from Cooley in 2024. That was a top 20 defense that seemed like he just found magic in a bottle with those guys on that team. And they play slower than everybody. I just think Kim English teams end up being less than the sum of their parts, and that's just screaming at me from this roster.
I do agree that that's the case, and more than likely that's the outcome for this team. And Kim, there's really no sugarcoating what Kim's 4 years have been. 16 and 24 in the Big East. He was 18 and 16 in the A10. He hasn't made a tournament. The offense has been bad, and it's literally just, I want to optimize shots at the rim and 3-point shots, but there's no thought process in how to get those, and it ends up being a whole lot of hero iso ball with guys that aren't that good enough or aren't good enough to do it. Think about how many times Devin Carter bailed them out 2 years ago, and they still had a junk offense. Right. Where if that offense was just halfway decent, they were playing in the tournament. I do think they have the personnel this year, though, to almost combat his elementary level of offensive coaching and teaching. Because if there is one guy that you can just give the ball to and just say, bail me out in the entire country, it is Jason Edwards.
Yeah.
And Edwards must have been, I'm sure the money was enticing, but the fact that the pitch to him is just like, hey, the light's green when you get off the bus, and that's the way he wants to play. Yeah. And I think he's going to lead the Big East in scoring. He was 27 points per 40 minutes last year in a stacked SEC. He's got 2 years of evidence now where he's shot better than 42% from the field and 35% from 3 on extremely high volume. I don't know. Things have to go wrong for him not to score the ball. And I don't know if Kim's that bad. They also bring in an NBA guy as an assistant where they've convinced themselves they're going to play a little faster, have some more off-ball action. We'll see. I don't see Kim as a guy that really likes to delegate a lot. Stubbornness is probably one of his downfalls.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about the NBA assistant they brought in and how he's going to change anything. But honestly, my question is exactly what you just said. Jason Edwards comes in wanting to play ISO hero ball. Kim English has played ISO hero ball. That's how he wants to play. Is this new assistant going to come in and say, I know you, the best player we brought in and probably sold you on taking as many shots as you can possibly imagine. Now we're going to ask you to facilitate a little bit more and get other guys involved. Is he actually going to do that? And I would put money on no.
I would agree. I think now it's going to be more creative ways to chuck up threes.
Yeah.
It's going to be the offense. And it's not going to be, hey, Jason Edwards, I need you in a pick and roll so you can start spreading the ball out. It's going to be, hey, we need one of the other guards to get the ball over half court, initiate a set, and then Jason can go or Sellers can go. Jalen Sellers is really good too. He 2 years ago at UCF was a really good defensive player. That UCF team, well, when he was on the floor, they had a 93 defensive rating, which is really solid. He's got the body, physical makeup, and he can really put the ball in the hoop too. Or he scored about 20 points per 40 minutes on that UCF team, and he did it without making threes. He shot only 29% from three, and I think that's uncharacteristic of him because he shot it really, really well at his mid-major stop beforehand. I think teams are going to have a hard time stopping both those guys on a given night, even if the offense is elementary and junk.
Are they going to be anywhere decent on the defensive end?
I think they'll be all right. Oswin's real as a rim protector, whether we want to admit it or not. He's got to stay out of foul trouble a little bit, but his backup is also a pretty real rim protector. They bring over Hargrove from Drexel, and Drexel really sucked with him off the floor. They were about 12 points worse in a net rating. And opponents only shot 50% at the rim with him out there. Like, there's real substance to him as a rim protector, even if he is on the smaller side. But he's kind of a real bouncy, tough athlete, tough kid. Good pickup for them. They have a good 40-minute rotation at the 5. 1 through 4, I got really no clue because I don't know how much they're going to play the two smallest guards together. That's Daquan Davis and Edwards. I don't know how much Ryan Neela plays, who I like his game. I think he's a smart player, but has some limitations on the defensive end.
Turnstile.
I don't know how interested Duncan Powell was in defending, and I think he's a good fit for this team because they want a spacer and they have a rim protector to play next to him. But he's got 3 years of evidence of not being the most winning player. He's played on 2 KenPom 300-plus teams and then a pretty garbage Georgia Tech team last year, even though he found a little something in ACC play, and down the stretch was one of their best guys and contributed to winning. So I will give him credit there. But yeah, you are right. It's where I think the Pitino jigsaw is perfect for Pitino to say, like, hey, I can go whichever route I want tonight. It's a real jigsaw in which I think Kim very much could have too many puzzle pieces.
Interesting.
He's not this real savant that's gonna, he was better last year when guys got hurt, where it simplified some of his rotational choices. So they almost beat Villanova because Justin Fernandez had to play, and he played well, and Rich Barron had to play, and he made like 7 threes.
Yeah,
it's gonna be weird seeing him try to find the rotation, but if it does click, the players are good basketball players, which Providence hasn't had under him outside of Devin Carter and Aduro.
Yeah. I heard this question on the 3-Man Weave podcast that I think is a good one to end on with Providence is Kim English the coach at Providence next year?
I personally think yes, but I think odds are no.
I think it's a no. I think
odds are no, because I think if it's not the tournament, the AD Napololo he's not gonna fall on that sword. Kim's going down, and he deserves the hot seat for 12 and 20 last year. He inherited a really good situation, and again, you can't put together a $9-10 million roster, which I'm assuming this is in the realm of, and not make it. Yeah. So yeah, you're all right. I'm kind of bracing myself for them to be the 4th team in the Big East.
I'm with you that the talent is there, particularly offensively. I just have faith in my guy Kim to figure out a way to blow it.
Yeah. And if the waves get rocky there,
yeah, we saw that last year already start to switch on him.
The fans are going to get angry, and Kim hears everything, and Kim will lash out, and it won't end pretty between those two.
All right, let's jump to Villanova here. Bringing in Kevin Willard, hoping that he is the long-term answer, I guess. Last year under Neptune, there's not a lot to really talk about because it's an entirely new team, an entirely new system, an entirely new roster. But Kyle Neptune was definitively not the guy. They hope they have the guy in Willard. Kind of an iffy roster, but it's Villanova. What do you think?
I think the roster's bad. I think Willard's getting way too much benefit of the doubt that he's a really good coach. I think I've always kind of compared him to Cooley, that they've kind of both been in that Cooley zone where it's a lot of KenPom 50 teams that get into the tournament because they win a lot of close games and their defense travels on the road. His last year's team at Maryland was awesome. And
Really good.
it wasn't totally because of Kevin Willard. They had 5 awesome players. Jacoby Gillespie, argument to be made, he was the best point guard on the transfer portal market this year. Derek Queen, lottery pick and instant impact. Julian Reese, good college player. Selton Miguel, good college player. Rodney Rice, another probably top 20, 25 guy in the portal this year. So he doesn't have anybody on this roster that's probably 80% of the player of any of those 5. And I think this is going to look a lot more like some of those junky Seton Hall teams. And those teams weren't that good. Again, in his last 9 seasons, 5 of Willard's teams have had a KenPom finish between 50 and 65, which I think this team would be lucky to hit that.
Yeah, I'll go a step further. I just flat out don't think Kevin Willard is good unless he has a guy. I've never seen it. Last year he had more than a guy. Easily his best season in college. They finished 10th in KenPom. They started preseason. They were ranked 38th. The year before that, they were ranked preseason 22nd, and they finished 62nd. He has a lot of these teams that are underperform their expectations unless there's a Derek Queen or Gillespie or Miles Powell goes absolutely nuts. And I'm with you. The roster isn't there. Akadin Lewis is a legit prospect, but I look at this roster and I say, I don't see it as really like a cohesive Big East roster. And they can play their way into that, but it just doesn't look like anything.
I think it's pronounced Acaden.
Thank you.
But agreed, he's got to be a guy. I also think expectations at Villanova are still going to be so warped from the Jay Wright experience. Neptune finished 51, 37, and 56 in KenPom. 3 straight top 60 finishes. I think there's a very real chance that 3 years from now, Willard's in the same region, even if they pump him with resources. Now, let's look at this team. They were resource short because they were late to the party, because Willard did the whole song and dance thing about how he might be staying at Maryland, how he was extorting Maryland for more resources. And he went to Villanova late in the process, and they were a step behind everybody else in filling rosters. Now, Lewis is going to be the point guard. That's a Caden. He's at times was flirting with 5-star status, probably comfortably a 4-star. He was previously a Kentucky commit. He's a local DMV kid, having played at Sidwell. He actually started his high school career at St. John's College, backing up Malik. Might be interesting seeing those 2 guys play against each other. And they're similar players. They're these kind of slender frame lefties with a little bit of flair to them. And I think if there is a question about a Caden at the highest level, which is the same question as Mac, is how efficient he's going to be. He has this really beautiful creativity and fluidity to him. But in high school, Sidwell is a great program, and they don't totally allow him to do all that stuff. You still have to play fundamental basketball playing for Singletary. So I don't know if he gets off the leash a little bit. And he only played 9 games his senior year at Sidwell. I think he dealt with an injury, but he didn't shoot it well. He shot 37% from the field and 33% from 3 in high school. And now Villanova is probably going to ask him to shoot 12 to 15 times a game. And, he's really good. And Georgetown was all over him. Kentucky was all over him. But he's got to be really good right away, which remains to be seen. Now, who's their other guard? Beats me. Rothstein went to their practice a month ago or so and said it was going to be Devin Askew, who is no good. Askew got hurt, so it's probably not going to be him. Yeah. But I do want to talk a little bit about Askew because he's had one of the weirder college careers of anybody recently. Went to Kentucky out of high school, then to Texas, and he's consistently going down a level to Cal and then Long Beach State. And he has a little something to him offensively, but kind of a major losing player. Long Beach State last year was one of the worst teams in the country. And he scored a lot of points, assisted a lot, but it was still like a 46% field goal rate, a 20% turnover rate. Playing at that level, it should have come easier. When he played on high major teams, he had turnover rates north of 23 3 times. In conference play, all 4 of those years, he shot less than 36% from the field, 3 of them. I just don't see that guy being an efficient plus guy any way you slice it. Now, I think Bryce Lindsey comes over from James Madison after originally being a bench guy at Texas A&M. Shot it really well at James Madison, 41% from 3. They were 8 points better per 100 with him on. I think he's their best option there. But I think there's also real questions like, is this guy a Big East starter? Because he was the sixth man at James Madison. Other options, Zion Stanford, similar questions, 13 a game at Temple, 35% shooter, kind of has the body and frame, but Temple stunk too at 173 in KenPom. Tyler Perkins, I really like Perkins personally. Another DMV kid that started at Penn. He was an on-off darling for them last year, by far the best one on their team, but a lot of that was propped up with what he did in non-conference. In conference play, he shot 37% from the field, 29% from three. It wasn't great offensively. Keep moving down. aMattaU Hodge is probably going to play the 4, which we touched upon Jayden's commitment earlier. He's Jayden's older brother. I think they need him to be awesome. Redshirted last year. Bigger kid that's supposed to have a lot of skill to him. And then the rest of their depth pieces are just like the Maryland spare parts. Tafara Gapari, Malachi Palmer, Braden Pierce. I don't think anybody was knocking down their doors trying to get those guys. They bring in Chris Jeffrey as a point guard. Tough kid, but not a great shooter. Probably sits behind Caden at first. He's going to guard room again is not good, but there's just a lot of bodies. And then the last guy I want to talk about, and I know I've been long-winded here, but this is what I think might really hurt them in the end, is Duke Brennan.
Yeah.
Who's their center, who's been a really good college basketball player at Grand Canyon, who's had some really good teams. But Grand Canyon one wasn't very good last year compared to what they did the previous year. And that was in part due to Tyon Grant Foster's step back in efficiency and productivity. But I think Brennan has some supreme cook to him and not complimentary. Like he's a tough kid. He's going to rebound, 9 rebounds per game last year, but he's 6'10" and he had a block rate less than 2%. And he's kind of always been that way where he plays vertical. He's got good verticality, but he doesn't turn anybody away. And what Grand Canyon had the last few years is like mega long bouncy wings. Tyon Grant Foster to 6% block rate, Locke Worth 6% block rate. Their team, when Brennan sat, had a 47% rim percentage, which is as low as it gets. And I do think that Brennan got propped up defensively by playing at a mid-major level and playing alongside some of these really versatile athletes. And this Villanova team, 1 through 4, is going to be small as hell and not that athletic, not provide a ton of resistance, which is like not what's ever worked for Willard. Willard's always had these tough, big sons of bitches like Cooley did. And I think there's a small chance it looks like Cooley year 1. It's going to be a little more talented than Cooley year 1, but I don't know what the identity is here.
I really like that comparison. I think you're right there. There's more talent there, but it doesn't make sense to me. And there are some big red flags. Devin Askew is a big red flag for me. Duke Brennan is a big red flag for me. I also wonder about the jump from going from the WAC to Big East play. That just seems like, even with the non-conference games that Grand Canyon was playing, and they were a good team, not last year, but the year before, that's a big step up in class.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it with Supreme. Supreme was a guy that, he's big, strong, physical, not going to get pushed around, but that only goes so far when you don't have some of these really elevated athletic traits and people around you that can hide some of your weaknesses.
All right, let's speed through these last 4, the bottom of the barrel here. There's some interesting things to note here, but we've got Butler next. Thad Matta, is this a team that is exciting? No, not to me. And there's some more big red flags to me on this team. What do you see?
Yeah, I think I'm going to be a Butler hater. And I wanted to like them, and I liked what they did at the very top of the portal. Getting Johan Troiori for me is like the biggest red flag of all time.
Wild.
But let's go back to the beginning, the major question is, you upgrading from Jameel Telfort and Pierre Brooks, who have been your offense the last 2 years and contributed to a good offense, top 40 offense in the country last year. And I don't think you are.
No.
These two guys combined to average 31 points a game last year. They both shot better than 47% from the field, both better than 34% from 3, both better than 77% from the line. Like, these guys were adult scorers, Power 5 lead options on certain nights. Now, their replacements are Michael Ajayi, who was awesome 2 years ago at Pepperdine, big-time shooter, big-time scorer, major step back at Gonzaga last year, only averaging 6 a game on 18% from 3, which is like, he's like the first guy to ever transfer to Gonzaga and get worse. But he's a solid defender, and they're going to need that physicality because they really don't have it elsewhere on the roster. Jalen Jackson comes over as a point guard. If you haven't watched Jalen Jackson Purdue Fort Wayne tape, which it sounds none of you should have watched that, but it's so fun. He's small and he's not athletic at all, but he's really good snaking through pick and rolls, can play with his back to the basket, awesome finishing around the rim, had a 56% 2-point field goal percentage. But he just doesn't shoot it well. He's 25% 3-point shooter, and he is not athletic at all at the point of attack defensively. Purdue Fort Wayne had 112 defensive rating with him on the floor, and it was a lot better with him off.
Yeah.
And then I guess your third option as a scoring replacement is going to be Bizjack, Finley Bizjack, who was their 1/2 last year. Now, I really like Bizjack. He was 11 a game in conference play. He shot 46% from 3 in conference play. He had a 17% assist rate to a 13% turnover rate. I think there's a fine player there as your third option, and as a guy who gets totally hidden on defense because he's a turnstile there, and I don't think this group hides him. So that leaves you to the rest of the crew. What do you get out of them? Butler comes over from Drexel. He was a good player there, 14 points per game, good on-off splits. 6 guys from this Drexel team ended up high major. You got to ask yourself, why the hell weren't they awesome in the CAA? Jamie Kaiser comes over after a redshirt year from Maryland. Really shot it like shit 2 years ago, but has the pedigree, has the athleticism. I think he plays a lot just because they're going to need Power 5 bodies, guys that can defend and switch in the front court. And then there's a bunch of freshmen that are pretty solid, but a Butler solid freshman class is a bunch of like fringe top 100 guys. It's not a bunch of fringe top 50 guys. And the best one of the bunch is probably going to be Oliogu, who's a Canadian kid who kind of fell down the rankings as high school seasons went on, but he was really good at U19 for Canada, and he's a huge major athlete, and they're going to need that. Now, do you want to touch upon the centers, or should I?
Go ahead.
I think Drayton Jones is their starting center, who was really good in the MEAC, but it's the MEAC. 104 defensive rating, 55% rim defense, nothing special there, but is a plus rebounder, pretty plus scorer at that level. He's probably serviceable in the Big East. Now, Johan Traore, who is either going to be a starter there or his backup, was like number 1 on my no-touch high major transfer portal list. Like, I think any coach that's desperate enough to take him they're screwed. Now, he was a 5-star recruit 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't know how the heck that happened, but he's, skinny, can move, has some offensive traits to him. But he's been at 3 schools now, and his on-off stuff is some of the worst stuff you'll ever see. First year, Auburn, net rating 17 points worse on the floor. Then he transferred down 2 levels to UC Santa Barbara. Net rating still 17 points worse. Allowed a 61% rim field goal percentage, 113 defensive rating, like one of the worst defenders in the country. Comes back, transfers up a level to SMU last year, and SMU had a good defensive team. They had Matt Cross, BJ Edwards, Chuck Harris. They were tough. Net rating 18 points worse again. 3rd straight year, 64% rim field goal percentage, which was Supreme Cook, Drew Fielder levels. I think if Butler is asking Traore to play 20 minutes per game, which looking at the roster, they are, like, I think they might give up 80 plus points per game in this league. And if you do that, you're going to win 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, particularly when you probably can't score consistently. I think that's the biggest. I think everything you said is exactly right. I don't think Finley Bizjack is a 40% 3-point shooter, even though he was last year. I expect him to come back to earth a little bit. And if he does, this team is scoring like, I don't know, in the 50s.
Well, they'll be better than that because Stat can coach it, and they've optimized some of their bombing a little bit. And they were 75 a game last year, but they were 75 a game last year shooting the hell out of it.
Yeah,
playing up tempo. Like, I think it could get ugly.
Yeah,
but I still think it's probably the 3rd worst roster in the league.
Yeah. Let's talk about another big question mark roster, but a team that I think is hoping that they are on the right track. Personally, I don't feel great about having 2 Pitinos in the league, but this is where we are. I will say I'm a huge fan. You are?
Give me as much of the Pitinos as I can get.
I am not a Richard Pitino guy. I'm not a believer.
Well, I am. I like Richard. He's a good coach.
We shall see.
I think he's screwed here. I think he shouldn't have taken this job.
I think that's probably right.
He should have waited 1 more year, and he had Providence.
Yeah, and UNM was He was not in a bad situation at New Mexico. That was a good team last year. That was a fun team last year. But
He was losing everybody, so he figured I
yeah,
have to get out now.
yeah.
But Providence would have hired him sight unseen whenever they were moving on from Kim.
They might try and hire him mid-season this year. I mean,
I
talk
could,
about tampering. They might go in with the hard
I could
sell
see
on
it.
him.
I could see it. It's a war of resources. If they went to him next year and said we've got $4 more million a year than Xavier, I could see it. But
So
I'll let you go.
this is a bad roster, right?
Yeah, it's bad. It's a mid-major roster.
Yeah. There's not much here.
It's so I'm gonna go on the train here that I like Richard. You know, he's not his dad, but
Sure.
the last 3 seasons he got shit on at Minnesota. He was Ken Pom top 65 all 3, and like now we've learned that Minnesota like didn't really have a prayer.
Yeah.
And he went to New Mexico. His last 3 teams top 70 Ken Pom. Last year was right around 40. He's got a really good eye for talent, especially guards. Really good at developing them too. You know, some of the guards that he's had, Donovan Dent, Jamal Mashburn, True Washington. I'm missing one too. But he's had great guard play, which is not too different than what his dad's calling card was. This team has awful guard play, I think. The way he built it, I don't totally see what the vision was, but they brought over Gabriel Posado from Evansville, who's a really highly rated kid coming over from overseas to Evansville in the first place, and had a good season at a low level, but wasn't that efficient, but wasn't really surrounded by anything. I think the thought process was going up a level with playing around better guys. He was going to still be able to be a high level scorer, but he got hurt. He did his meniscus, and they don't really know how long it's going to be. So they're working without a guy who they thought was going to be their best scorer. And then I think scoring is not the major concern here. I don't know how they defend. If we run through the roster, they're probably going to play Roddy Anderson at point guard. Redshirted last year, 2 years ago, was a 25-minute-a-game guy at Boise State, a good Boise State team, but he was by far their worst player. Bad shooter, bad defender. They were 12 points better with him off the floor. I can't imagine he goes from a really well-coached, well-put-together Mountain West team and gets better on a hodgepodge, bottom-of-the-barrel Big East team. Now, they also bring over a guy named All Right. Yeah, that's his name, from Valparaiso. Again, he's a chucker. Pretty solid shooter, but Valparaiso was better with him off the floor, sported 111 defensive rating. Some of these bottom of the barrel teams in the transfer portal just get some of these small chuckers that scored a bunch of points at a mid-low major level. And I really don't think those guys are going to translate all that well.
Counterpoint. All Right is my single favorite player of last season, mostly because of his name, but he was just electric to watch.
He's a total bomber.
It's going up from anywhere. It's incredible.
He can shoot it too.
Yeah.
I'll give him that. And I think that's probably Xavier's path. Like it might look a little bit like what Holtman's team looked at the beginning of last year, where it's just like, hey, we're just going to shoot a bunch of threes. And by February, I'll figure out which 3 players on my roster belong in the Big East. And in the meantime, our only chance is just bombs away. Yeah. Now, the other guards are definitely more role players, but I like them. Like I like Malik Moore coming from Montana, 12 a game at Montana, 6'5", kind of has the physical frame to survive in the Big East. Montana was a lot better with him on the floor. Isaiah Walker was the same way at a decent Belmont, 11 points per game. Didn't shoot it all that well, but has the frame to survive here. Philip Baravacanen is probably the best guy he brought over from New Mexico. He brought 2 kids, both of which are going to play a lot. Baravacanen he's Serbian. He's got a pretty good frame to him. His defensive numbers at New Mexico were really good, and he rebounds the ball pretty well. And I think if you played 22 minutes a game on a team that made it to the second round, you're probably a shoo-in for playing 25 plus minutes on this team. He also brings over Jovan Milicevic from New Mexico, kind of the antithesis of Baravacanen, where he's got the same size and length, but he's a total bomber, big time shooter. I think he plays a lot too. They bring Trey Carroll from Florida Atlantic. He's been a great scorer his whole career, averaging more than 20 points per 40, all 3 years of his career. Total turnstile though. I think Pitino really has to make a decision with his front court, how much does he need the scoring or how much does he need to put together 5 guys that can athletically survive? And then the last guy to talk about, which is definitely the most important guy on the roster, is the center coming over from Virginia, Anthony Robinson. I personally really like Robinson. He played 9-10 minutes a game in Virginia last year, 3.5 points, 2.5 rebounds, had a pretty good block rate, really high field goal percentage, 72%. He's toolsy as hell, kind of strong kid, can jump, long arms. And Virginia was better with him on the court, 6 points better per 100, which is all promising for a young big, especially as one that they're going to ask more of. The one weird thing looking at his advanced numbers, Virginia allowed a 66% field goal percentage at the rim with him on, which is like, that's worse than Traore. And I don't totally know how that happened, if that was just fluky or not, given, the traits that Robinson possess. So I think there's a huge variance in outcome in the type of player he is playing 25 minutes per game. And if it's good, like NJ Benson was decent for DePaul last year, they might survive. If it's bad, I think Seton Hall could be better than them.
Yeah, I think there is one player on this team that I feel good about, and I think it's Barichanine. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Borovicinin.
Yeah,
I'm pronouncing it wrong, but it's
Barichanine. I think he's really good, and I think he is going to play his way onto a better team next year for his grad year.
Does he have another year? I didn't know if he did.
I assume so. If he doesn't, that's a bummer for him, because I think he can take the step up. He was really good, particularly at the end of the year for New Mexico, and I think he is possibly the only Big East caliber starter on this roster.
Yeah, I would agree that I think if, say we were in the portal looking at all these guys, he's probably the only one that I would have actively recruited. Robinson, maybe, if you were just looking for that 15-minute a game backup big. And then I think you could also make the case, depending on what you're looking for, on Posato, the Italian kid. But I also think that there's a really good chance that they just put Posato on ice and don't let people kind of get a 15-game look at him playing at a high major conference and then put their bids in the offseason.
Yeah.
Like they're probably better off sitting him down and saying, you're starting next year. But man, I don't like the roster. It's a bunch of guys that would start on halfway decent mid-major teams.
Yeah. All right, let's do Seton Hall next and then end on DePaul. This
Perfect.
Seton Hall team is, part of me feels bad for Shaw. Like, they don't have the resources there, and this team just is a whole lot of meh to me. Am I wrong? Is this a secret good team in disguise, or is this another 2-win Big East squad?
No, I think it's pretty awful, but I think he at least has more darts to throw this year. Like, he's got 9 guys, maybe 3-4 of them survive. And I think last year he needed Dual and Middleton to be high major studs. And I think it was obvious, like 2 games into the season, that there wasn't a prayer there. I personally don't really like any of the guys that they've got outside of the freshman center that they're reclassing up, but there's enough guys there with enough of a pedigree that it looks a little bit better than what you had last year, where you were like, oh, I need Claude Jenkins to be my best scorer. So I can run through the roster real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
The point guard, who's going to be the most fun guy to watch, is going to be Bud Clark.
Yeah.
He comes over from Merrimack. He's 5'9", like one of the highest usage guys in the country when he was at Merrimack, but he was the NEC Player of the Year. Now, I wouldn't get too excited about the translation from NEC to Power 5. Jordan Durkak did it last year to Rutgers, and it didn't work out for him. And Durkak was 6'4" and has some physical traits to him. And I don't actually think Bud is all that good offensively or efficient. He averaged 20 points and 6 assists at Merrimack, which is awesome. But Merrimack had a roughly 300th ranked offense in KenPom, and their strategy was just let Bud do whatever he wants. And I think there's a good chance Shaw's strategy this year is let Bud do whatever he wants, but he's going to do it against Big East defenses, and that is a recipe for disaster. Bud's played 7 games in his career versus Tier A opponents, according to KenPom, and his offensive rating is south of 80. So he hasn't been good versus good teams that can match him with size. He's kind of a chicken with his head cut off. Now, last year's team was 300th ranked on offense, which is like his St. Peter's teams were better.
Yeah.
That absolutely can't happen. So he needs something that's going to be top 150 to have a chance. And I think that's asking a lot for Shaw, especially with the guys that he brought in, because even though some of these guys have scored a little bit, every major player is a pretty awful shooter. You know, Clark, Simpkins from Elon, McCray from Miami, Fisher from Pacific, previously at Texas Tech and DePaul, Mike Williams from LSU, Trey Parker from NC State, all of them sub 33% three-point shooters. The best shooter in the group is probably Jacob Dar coming over from Rice, who actually has this kind of physical profile to maybe play at the Big East level, but his on-off numbers at Rice were awful, like defensively awful. And I think if you run down all of these guys, all of their defensive numbers were awful. Like Simpkins at Elon had a 110 D rating. Mike Williams at LSU, they were 16 net points worse with him on the floor. Trey Parker at NC State had a 111 defensive rating. Pat McCray, Miami was awful, and they were still 12 points more awful with him on the floor. Elijah Fisher, 113 defensive rating at Pacific. Pacific was 22 points per 100 better with him off the floor, and he was supposed to be their best guy. Like all of these guys, there's a reason they're at Seton, because this is their reclamation project. And I do think that Shaw can really coach defense, but Shaw can really coach defense when he has 9 football players that want to be really physical. And I think he grabbed a bunch of bargain parts with some decent pedigrees, hoping that 3 of them click. And I just think it could be bad. I think it could be a defense ranked at 150 and an offense ranked at 220.
Yeah, I think I just go back to your first point that like he's got more pieces. I'm not sure that he has any better pieces than he did last year. I don't see a guy on here that I'm like, they're much better than what he had. He certainly has more of them, so maybe they find some chemistry somewhere, but it's not good.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bud's probably going to be like 17 points and 5 assists a game, but it might be like a total nightmare getting to that. And yeah, nobody's as good as Coleman, who we had last year. I think you got to throw him a little bit of a bone that Middleton, Dual, and Oligbe were just bad.
Yeah.
But Middleton, Dual, and Oligbe were big, long, and physical.
Yeah.
So he at least was able to do some of the things he wanted to do defensively, which I'm not sure this group will. We'll see. I still kind of have like the smallest thought in the back of my mind that this team's not going to finish 11th, that someone else is going to manage to suck more. But I think if you were betting on it, have to bet on them finishing 11th.
I know this last team is one that you would not bet on to finish last. So let's just tee this up. Convince me that DePaul is good.
All right. I've been waiting all day for this. On my notes here, my first line says, I like them, sue me. And that's how I feel. I think this is the year Holtman and DePaul crack 100 in KenPom. And I think they do it relatively comfortably. So at a school like DePaul, where maybe you're a little resource shy, or if your players do play well, they're probably looking to jump up a level. The most important thing is like identifying 2 or 3 guys that contributed to winning and keeping them. And they did that. Their 3 best players at the end of the year, no doubt, were Layden Blocker, CJ Gunn, and NJ Benson. And at the end of the year, they started playing winning basketball. They won 3 out of their last 5. They beat Georgetown twice, beat Providence once, lost twice to NCAA tournament Creighton, but both those games were really close. One of them a double overtime game in the Big East, which they should have won. Now, down the stretch, Blocker was really good. He made 16 of his last 29 threes in Big East play, which begs the question, can he shoot? Because when he couldn't shoot, I thought he wasn't a good player. But if he can shoot, he has some of the athleticism and passing and facilitating stuff that makes him a viable high major starting guard. CJ Gunn, he's a chucker, but he scored double digits in 18 of his last 19. His one miss in that 19-game stretch was a 9-point outing. Holtman gave him the freedom, and he kind of blossomed under it. If he makes the jump as a 3-point shooter, he was like a 29, 30% guy last year. Like he might be 18 a game and could be an all Big East guy just on counting stats. And then Benson, again, he's serviceable, but he's like the type of serviceable I love. He was a real glue guy on Missouri State before he came over to DePaul. And then last year, it kind of became apparent that he was just a small ball 5, but they were good when he was on the floor. They had a plus 13 net rating with him on the floor, which is like, that's a top 100 KenPom team. And they had a -3 rating with him off the floor, which is, there's your 200 KenPom team. He averaged 16 points, 11 rebounds, 2.5 blocks per 40. I think he beat up on bad centers because he's a physical kid, and I think there's going to be a lot of bad centers. So I think they've got 3 guys there that proved last year that they can at least be Big East starters, maybe not on a top half roster, but Big East starters. Now, what do they bring in? I think they fell a little short here on like really making that jump. Caleb Banks is going to be the big guy. He's coming from Tulane, previously at Indiana. He was buried at Indiana behind Malik Renault, who we talked about last episode. But he was 15-7 at Tulane. He has the physical prerequisites to survive playing high major basketball. He's going to play 30 minutes a game at the 4. And then I think in the rest of the roster, Holtman's thought process was shooting. Because in all 4 of those guys, there's not a ton of shooting. And Holtman's claim to fame kind of is this: if I don't have the athletic Jimmys and Joes, we'll just spread it out and try to X and O you to death. And he, don't know if he totally nailed that.
Yeah.
He brings over RJ Smith from Colorado, shot 39% from 3. Dalalich was a European kid coming over from Pitt who got hurt, tore his ACL, is missing the year. They were supposed to be getting a couple guys in the portal. CJ Jones ended up staying at Kansas State. There was rumors Ali Divo was going there before he went to Texas A&M. There was rumors that a Belgian point guard, Noah Miason, was going there before he went to Arizona State. And what they settled on at the very end was guard Elijah Miljasevic from Mega Basket over in the Adriatic League. And Mega is just funneling kids to college. They're like, there's 7 or 8 guys going over, and he was probably their like 7th guy. Major shooter, almost 45% from 3 over in the Adriatic League. Good chance that he starts. It's going to be one of him or RJ Smith. Now, the concern with this team is going to be the depth. It's bare bones. Their 7th man is a kid from Radford who's a tough kid. But then after that, it gets really bare. They need to find some sort of center that can back up Benson, whether that's Kaman Maker, who comes over from St. John's having not played at all, or a freshman, Isaiah Medina, who's a big 7'1" kid, but supposed to be really raw. I don't know what it is. They bring over another kid from Spain, but they said he's going to redshirt. I think what it ends up being is Caleb Banks just plays your small ball 5 and you go small and it's bombs away. But I kind of like it. I kind of trust Holtman. I kind of trust what he might do with player development and continuity of the 3 kids that stay. I think Caleb Banks I think he might be the best portal get of these bottom 4 teams that we discussed. Maybe it's Ajayi or Jalen Jackson at Butler, but he's right up there.
Yeah.
And they were just a real bitch at the end of the year to deal with. I think they can. This league's bad. It's really good 1 to 2.
Yeah.
And then it's a total free for all. And I think DePaul is going to pick off tier 2 here and there and pick off tier 3 here and there. I think there's a chance they'd finish better than Villanova.
Yeah, I could see that. I think you've mostly sold me. The thing that I think for me, as I look at this roster, it's the shooting for sure. Despite the way he finished the year, I do not believe in Layden Blocker. I don't see it. And I think it was a mistake to put your eggs in that basket. And I could be very wrong about that, but that to me is the linchpin.
I think I like him. I don't think he's going to shoot. I think that was fluky as hell.
Yeah.
But I think and I've kind of hammered on it this entire episode, that to survive in a high major setting, you either have to be really special skilled wise, or you have to have these physical prerequisites. We've been watching Georgetown teams for half a decade have guys that just were not physically capable of surviving out there. Blocker, he can survive. I'll take the chance on the kid that can survive physically and then improving with time as a decision maker and as a shooter and as a facilitator than the guy that's fighting this uphill battle to survive on every defensive possession.
Well, we'll watch this and we'll judge it at the end of the year where it comes out.
Yeah, I'll be more definitive on predictions next time.
Yeah, we're going to get into our part 2 is going to dive into full on predictions for everything in the Big East, but that is about as complete and comprehensive and insightful of a Big East preview as I think you can get.
That was my hope when I wasted a couple hours away doing some research.
A lot of good stuff there. As always, Jake, thank you. We will, as I said, be back next week to dive into full predictions, how the Big East finishes, who wins it, awards, all of that stuff.
Probably get back to talking some Georgetown again.
Yeah.
I know this was a bunch of teams that folks may not care about, but looking forward to it.
Yeah. You need to know about these teams because we play them all. This is our league.
Hopefully beat many of them.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
There you go. All right.
No problem, Gideon. Hoya Saxa to you.